We're living in an era where people see your message, but rarely see you. Have you noticed? In a world flooded with information, but starving for connection, we've started to settle for half-hearted relationships. A quick reply, a random comeback, one text, and suddenly we convince ourselves maybe they still care. But deep down, you know, you're loving someone who is not truly present with you. They're there, but like a shadow, cold, distant, non-committal. And every time you try to get closer, they take another step back. You start questioning yourself. You think, if I just love harder, wait longer, give more, maybe they'll finally see how much I matter. But the irony, the more you try to prove your worth, the more they take you for granted. And still, you keep holding on. Because somewhere inside, you believe, real love never gives up. But here's the truth. You're not holding on to love. You're abandoning yourself. You may not realize it, but you're in a relationship driven by avoidant attachment. Someone too afraid to connect. And you haven't yet found the courage to step away. But there's one thing you haven't tried. Intentional withdrawal, not as a tactic, but as a boundary to go silent long enough for your worth to speak louder than your words. Your silence becomes the loudest message they've ever heard. This video isn't about playing games. It's about remembering this. You don't have to scream to be seen. You just have to know when to walk away, so that the avoidant finally hears the only voice they've been running from, their own. There are moments when you no longer recognize yourself. You used to be strong, confident, passionate, but ever since you entered this relationship, you've become someone who keeps trying just a little bit more to be loved. Just one more effort, and maybe they'll finally see your worth. A longer message. Another act of patience. One more time, letting things slide. You tell yourself, if I just hang in there, they'll get it. But they don't. They pull away, and still you keep trying, until one day you realize you're exhausted. I once heard the story of a woman named Lynn. Name changed. She fell in love with a man who had avoidant attachment. At first, he was charming, intelligent, emotionally deep, but always distant. Every time Lynn tried to open up or get closer, he grew cold. Sometimes he'd disappear for days. She thought she must have done something wrong. So she softened her words, accepted less, apologized even when she wasn't at fault. She began to love with fear. Fear of loss, fear of doing the wrong thing, fear of being abandoned again. And then one day, sitting in front of the mirror, she looked at her reflection and said, who am I loving? And who have I lost in the process? This is the cycle so many fall into when loving an avoidant. They go cold. You panic. You do more. They feel pressured. They pull further away. You feel unworthy. You try harder. Every time you give more, you believe it's out of love. But what you're really doing is losing connection with yourself. You begin to confuse endurance with love. You start calling self-sacrifice a sign of devotion, when in truth, you're slowly abandoning your own inner world. Here's the painful truth. In unhealthy relationships, especially with avoidance, the more you try to prove your worth, the more they begin to devalue it. Not because you aren't worthy, but because you're offering your worth to the wrong person in the wrong way. A person who's emotionally avoidant can't receive your message no matter how loudly you speak. They don't hear love. They feel pressure. They don't see your care. They see intrusion. And this is not your fault. You're simply loving in your own language, hoping they'll understand, but they don't. And you're not wrong for loving, but you must understand, real love doesn't require endless self-erasure. Real love doesn't make you feel small. It doesn't keep you stuck in a place where you always have to do more just to feel like you matter. It's often in the moment when you finally stop trying that something unexpected begins to happen. Not when you send one more message, not when you explain yourself again, but when you disappear with intention. It sounds counterintuitive, but for someone with avoidant attachment, it's not your constant presence that makes them feel you. It's the space your absence creates. Avoidants don't respond to closeness. They respond to distance. The more you move in, the more they retreat. It's not personal, it's survival. But the moment you step back, not out of anger, not to manipulate, but with clarity and self-respect, something inside them starts to shift. According to Dr. Amir Levine, neuroscientist and author of Attached, avoidantly attached individuals tend to suppress their attachment needs. Emotional intimacy can feel invasive to them, like a loss of control, so they shut down. But when someone who used to show up suddenly, doesn't that familiar illusion of security begins to crack? The silence disturbs the false safety. The absence interrupts their emotional avoidance. They won't say it. They might not even reach out right away. But inside, something activates. What's happening? Why aren't they texting? Am I losing them? They couldn't see you clearly when you were right in front of them, giving everything. But now, they start to feel you only because you're gone. There's a powerful quote that fits this moment perfectly. Your silence becomes the loudest message they've ever heard. This isn't punishment. This is the space you create so they can finally confront their own emotional reality. You no longer rush in to fill every void with your presence. You stop softening their discomfort with long, understanding texts. You stop holding up the relationship alone with your effort. And in that space, you force the avoidant to sit with the very emptiness they've spent their whole life trying to escape. And this is the turning point. Instead of asking, how do I get them to see my worth? Ask yourself, can I pull back my energy long enough for my worth to reveal itself without me having to prove it? We often assume that to be valued, we need to do more, say more, give more, love harder. But the truth is, it's often in the absence that people finally feel the presence of what they once took for granted. It's like a background noise you never noticed until it disappears. And suddenly you realize it had been filling the silence all along. When your silence comes from a grounded, secure place, not from pain or revenge, it carries real weight. It leaves the avoidant with nothing to resist, no drama to run from, just themselves and the hollowness you used to soothe. And if that person has the emotional maturity to face what's inside them, they may finally feel it. Not because you pushed, but because you finally stopped pushing yourself. So no, you don't need to try harder to make them see you. You only need to stop at the right moment so they can feel the absence of what they once ignored. And if they still don't, then you've been handed the most valuable truth of all. You never needed to hand your worth to someone who wasn't ready to hold it. Not everyone who loses you will know what they lost, but someone who is truly emotionally available will feel the silence and respect the space you've created. By now, you might be wondering, if stepping back made them start to feel me, then why did they run away when I got close with all my honesty and care? The answer doesn't lie in you. It lies in a deep fear they've carried for far longer than even they may realize. A fear that began long before they ever knew what love meant. Because avoidant people aren't cold-hearted. They're not detached because they don't know how to love. They pull away because to them, love feels like a threat of losing freedom, of being trapped, of getting hurt. Love, for you, might mean safety, understanding, and being truly seen. But for someone with avoidant attachment, love feels like a trap. The closer you get, the more suffocated they feel. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because their nervous system has been wired to interpret closeness as danger. According to John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, avoidantly attached individuals often develop a psychological defense mechanism called emotional deactivation. That means when emotions become overwhelming, they don't reach out for connection, they shut down. They disconnect from their own feelings to avoid being overwhelmed. So while you're thinking, we're finally getting closer, they're thinking, alarm, I'm about to be consumed. I'm losing my space. You interpret their silence as rejection, but to them, silence is survival. If they were to fully feel what you're giving, your affection, your presence, your unconditional love, it would trigger something they fear even more, emotional dependency. They're afraid of needing you, and because of that fear, they'll deny it. Through silence, through mixed signals, through disappearing after a deeply intimate moment, you'll be left confused, wondering, did I do something wrong? And the truth is, you didn't. You're simply loving someone who's still in a war with themselves. You're loving someone who learned, consciously or not, that love isn't a safe place. That closeness equals danger. That to be needed, or to need someone, is to lose control. And because they've never truly experienced love as a soft, safe space. When you offer them that kind of love, they don't trust it. They expect hurt. They expect disappointment. And while you're patiently loving them, they're quietly building walls. Here's the hard truth. The more securely and gently you love them, the more threatened they feel. Not because you're a threat, but because their own emotions aren't stable enough to receive your love. They interpret love as pressure to reciprocate, as a reminder that they're not enough, as a risk of being abandoned if they open up too much. So, to protect themselves, they withdraw, even if deep down they want love. They don't trust it. And this creates a cruel paradox. The closer you get, the further they pull. The more real you become, the more they panic. The more you want to connect, the more they try to disconnect. You see someone you want to heal. They see someone who might expose their deepest fears, so they run. But the truth is, no one can heal an avoidance fear of intimacy except them. And if you don't realize this early, you'll stay stuck in a painful cycle, always blaming yourself for their withdrawal. You'll ask, what did I do wrong? When the real question is, am I loving someone who's not ready to be loved? Their distance is not a rejection of you. It's a reflection of a fear they haven't named, a wound that's never been acknowledged, a defense system built in childhood to protect them from feeling too much, needing too much, or being hurt again. And the closer you get, the harder they fight to keep their heart closed. And then, when you don't understand why they're pulling away, you begin to panic. From that initial confusion, you shift into action. Another message, a plea for clarity, a reminder of everything you once shared. The more you feel the connection slipping, the tighter you try to hold on. But the closer you move, the more they retreat. And so, you enter a brutal loop. You love harder, they back off. You panic, you try harder. They grow colder, you get hurt, and then you try again. Not because you're weak, but because you once believed that this was how you keep love alive. At this point, love is no longer a two-way current. It becomes a draining, one-sided effort. You live in a constant state of waiting for a reply, for a response, for some signal that they still care. And every time they return, even slightly, hope kicks in again. Maybe this time will be different. But do you know what's actually exhausting you the most? It's not the rejection. It's the drip feed of hope. A little bit of attention, a brief moment of warmth, and then silence again. Like they're offering you one drop of water just to keep you thirsty. You start to confuse emotional instability with love. You think your heart still longs for them, when in reality, it's your mind clinging to an illusion that no longer exists. And you are not wrong for wanting to be loved. No one is wrong for craving connection, for needing to be seen and chosen. But you begin to lose your way the moment you place your self-worth in the hands of someone who's not capable of holding it. You wait for them to recognize your value, but the one person ignoring the most obvious truth is you. Your worth doesn't need to be proven. It needs to be protected. When you keep trying to be chosen, you're unconsciously telling yourself, I'm still not enough. And that message repeats itself every single day you choose to stay in something that makes you feel smaller than who you really are. Trying isn't wrong, but trying in the wrong place can cost you your entire sense of self. You don't have to stop loving them, but you do need to stop trading your self-worth for a connection that depletes you. It's heartbreaking to realize you once believed that love meant persistence, patience, and staying until the very end. But the longer you stay, the more unrecognizable you become to yourself. The cost of just one more try is often the last piece of self-respect you still have. And the cruelest part? You cannot make someone see you by erasing yourself. So pull back not because you've stopped loving, but because it's time to start loving yourself more, because the right person will never make you beg for the bare minimum. They'll see you clearly when you're standing in your full light. And then, after all the anxious chasing, after all those times you told yourself, just one more try, you finally realize it's not love that's exhausting you. It's how you've been fighting to hold together a love that only flows in one direction. You cannot keep sacrificing your emotional well-being just to keep someone who never learned how to keep you. You cannot keep pouring goodness into a void they refuse to face. This is the moment you need to make a deliberate withdrawal, not to manipulate, not to make them chase you, but to recover yourself. We're often taught to believe that pulling away is a game, a tactic, but the truth is this: Stepping back when it comes from a place of clarity is one of the highest acts of self-respect. It's how you say, I can't keep losing my peace to maintain a connection that's breaking me. And sing. And here's the paradox. When you truly withdraw your energy from the avoidant, not out of anger, not to provoke them, but through a deep, grounded silence, what your words could never say, the distance will. Because for avoidantly attached individuals, emotional language isn't spoken, it's felt. They don't respond to what you say, but they feel the absence of your energy the moment it disappears. One of the most powerful truths is this. When you stop trying to be chosen, you begin choosing yourself. Therapist Esther Perel beautifully said, distance breed desire, loss create recognition. It means space creates longing. Loss brings clarity. And sometimes it's not closeness, but space that allows real attachment to take shape. You don't go silent so they'll come back. You go silent because you've already said enough, given enough, tried enough. And now it's time to see, in your absence, will they even notice what's no longer there? If they are emotionally mature, they will feel the emptiness. They won't be able to replace the way you showed up. They'll remember not because you forced them to, but because distance finally made them sit with what they've been avoiding all along. And if they feel nothing, then that is not a failure. That is clarity. You've just saved yourself from handing your value to the wrong person again. Walking away from an unhealthy bond isn't selfish. It's an act of courage because you're not just saying no to someone, you're saying yes to yourself. You're choosing to stop disappearing into someone else's confusion. You're choosing to take a step back, not so they'll follow, but so you can finally see yourself again. They might not come back, but you're finally coming home to you. And that is the only return that really matters. At some point you will understand, silence is not punishment. It is power. It's the moment you stop needing to explain yourself because deep down, you've loved, you've tried, you've shown up with all your heart, and now you choose to stop proving, not because you gave up, but because you have nothing left to prove. Maybe you were hoping they'd one day say, I see you, I understand you, end. But the truth is, no one can truly see your worth if you keep asking them to validate it for you. Your value was never about whether they stayed or came back. It reveals itself most clearly when you choose to step back, because the moment you retreat, your worth finally steps forward. You stop pleading, you stop chasing, you stop explaining. And in that silence, you let it speak for you. The silence becomes your final message, the voice of your self-respect, the boundary between chaos and calm, the quiet space where healing begins. Silence is not punishment, it's power. The greatest strength is not in holding on, but in knowing when to let go in order to hold on to yourself. And if you're in this journey right now, if you're still wondering why someone couldn't love you the way you deserved, then please remember this. Every time you choose yourself, you're stepping away from fear and walking toward peace. Healing isn't about forgetting them. Healing is about remembering who you are. Not the version of you waiting at the door, but the version that opens a new door, one that leads back to self-worth, wholeness, and dignity. You no longer need them to see you, because now you finally see yourself